Hey guys, it's Ian from SS8000 Cars, and today we're going to talk about the AMG GT-S, a car that seems to have pretty much carved its own niche in the marketplace. Obviously fettled and originally designed by AMG, who are part and wholly owned by the Mercedes group, and this car has really two derivatives. The GT-S, which you see before you now, which has 510 HP, and the GT, which is about 462 HP. I really want to start with its looks. I genuinely think this is one of the best looking cars on the road. Now, I was obviously quite taken with it, as you probably noticed with the first video, the collection video that I did, but having had 2 or 3 days to sort of get used to it, I actually think the looks are absolutely fantastic. They're dramatic, has a dramatic effect. I think sums it up from the front. It's so low and purposeful. I mean, that of course comes with a potential disadvantage, which is that it's also extremely wide. Had great difficulty in London in getting it in between the white lines that demark the parking spaces. But outside that, it's really cuts an image on the road, in my opinion. From absolutely every angle, this car looks absolutely stonking. You know, I love the integrated exhaust, the twin pipes on either side of the diffuser. I think look fantastic. I think it's very modern with its rear lighting system. It's understated in terms of not having overt spoilers on the car, and as a general rule I prefer spoilers, I prefer spoilers that go up and down, but when they go down they're sort of along the lines of the car, and you can see quite clearly here where the spoiler is situated, and this raises itself at speed. You can see how long the bonnet is. It is worth mentioning because, to be truthful, I actually find you in the car you can see to about here when you're sitting in the car, because you sit so low, and the screen, which we'll maybe cover a little bit later, is a little restricted because it's quite a small screen, and as a consequence you really can't see the front the front 3 feet of this car. Got the strakes on the side in front of the air vent with V8 bi-turbo on it, so obviously it's a 4 litre V8 twin turbo. So it's a modern generation engine, and I suspect it would be the fuel economy on the car would be quite good. I mean, we've actually been averaging about 23, 24, but I think you've got to remember that a good part of that was driving in London. Again, the badging is very subtle. I love the 3-pointed star at the front of the car. I just think, that is just so evocative of Mercedes-Benz and of the racing Mercedes that they have had through the years. And again, the very subtle badging at the front, the AMG. And almost from every angle. I mean, I actually particularly like it from this angle. I think looking at the front there just shows you how far out the front is. However, one of the benefits of the car is, of course, it's not a mid-engine car, because of course we tend to think of mid-engines of being behind the rear seats, as in the McLaren and in the Porsche GT4 that we have. But if we come inside the car and we open the bonnet lift is down in the passenger footwell, come round to the front. Hopefully I can never find clips on these things. Oh, there we go. What you can see here is just how far back this engine actually goes. It's absolutely fantastic, and set up with handling in mind, because if I come back and show you where the front wheels are in relation to where the engine starts, which is pretty much here, it really is how they define today as a front mid-engined machine, and that will definitely benefit the handling. And then you can see there's an element of individuality about AMG. They have the handcrafted plaque in the center of the engine bay with, as you can see, individually put together by one technician, which I think is fantastic. I mean, obviously this thing is on a production line as well. So it's a very neat engine area, although again, as you can see, they have plenty of space to play with, but they have shifted the engine right back into the bulk area. I come into here again. Down here we have the position for the boot release, which you can also do on the key. I'll show you the key a little bit later. And there's a useful amount of room in here. Now, I wouldn't like to go and say that it's cavernous exactly, because it simply isn't. But you have the netting, which allows you to, when the boot is closed, so this area is then cut off from prying eyes, so everything that goes in here effectively is going to be storage out of sight. But then you do have a bit in front of the boot area as well, which you can load. Little bit like the McLaren 570 GT in a way. Obviously it's not in the same price point as the McLaren, but it's quite a useful storage area, no question, and it goes quite a long way into the side. So as long as you've got soft bags, you'd actually get a whole load of stuff in here. So it'd be good for, I mean, obviously it doesn't need to tour for 4, because there are only 2 seats in this car, so it's only taking stuff for 2 people. But I'm quite impressed with that. I mean, I think that's bigger than the rear of the GT4, maybe a little more shallow. But of course with the GT4 you have a front area as well. Again, a nice reassuring thud. So we come into the car, quite short doors, don't open up in the way that the cars, I call it potential predecessor, but of course this car is at a different price point to the SLS. But what I would like to just show is that quite clearly, I should just shut this door, quite clearly it bears a lot of the styling points from the SLS. The SLS had an extremely long bonnet area. It wasn't a hatchback as I understand it, it was a boot, but nevertheless it's the same basic design package as the SLS. So we're in the car, and the second that you come in and close the door, you can see that the instrumentation lights up. I like the instrumentation actually. You've got the central computer area in between the rev counter and the speedometer, with the engine temperature and the fuel capacity needles below those dials respectively. So just going to start it up. I should have had the window open really to let you listen to it. It does make it just the most fantastic burble. So now the car's set up, you can see that I tend to have it on the miles per hour section in the middle, but you can scroll through the middle section and you can pull up all the stats from the main computer, which you would normally look at on your central binnacle screen in front of you. At its price point, my opinion is it's the best looking car on the market. And I think inside there's a splash of excitement here as well. It's well designed. Now, I know there is a tendency with us YouTubers to be excited about all the cars we review. Now, in truth, in my case, I tend to review cars that I know I'm probably likely to like, so I think that probably influences things. But I don't like the center console in this. If you look, you know, I'm not a large guy, but the footwell for both the driver and the passenger is quite limited, and I'm genuinely not sure why the center console needs to be quite as large as this, because quite clearly in the center we've got our ventilation and air conditioning and climate controls here, plus the main menu for the car. So, you know, you can go straight in. Main menu for the climate control, you go straight into the climate control. And this here is obviously for drinks, so it's quite nice in a way. It's deep and it's wide, so it take large coffee cups. But I just think it's bigger than it needs to be. Okay, that aside, I love the air vents in the center, the four air, sort of a la Bentley to an extent, but I think they're a really nice styling feature on the car. I did cover this earlier, but what I will do is I'll just I'll run by what all the different controls are. So here, this is your suspension and throttle settings, or drivetrain as McLaren will call it, settings. So if we go over to the left, you can see the individual comes up. So basically we can set the car up for how we want it. So the screen doesn't stay on too long, sorry about that. But basically it allows us to have the chassis settings in soft, but the drivetrain in sport or sport plus, or vice versa, which is quite nice in a way, because a lot of the driving that I do in London doesn't really need me to be in anything more than economy, because the car makes a fantastic burble in economy. So that's the only thing that I'd want it for, really. So if we move the powertrain stroke suspension setting to the right, we then have comfort, which is what I would tend to have it in a lot of the time, because when we go into sport, what sport does is it locks out the top gear, except if you're cruising on a motorway at 60, 70 plus. And then you can hear, I don't know whether you heard that, but the engine note hardened as I went into Sport Plus. So basically what Sport Plus does, it immediately activates the exhaust, the heavy exhaust note, so makes the car louder. And then down here we've got race, okay, which is obviously more for the track and is the hardest setting in the car. So I bring it back to, can you hear that? Just as I come down from S to S, from S plus, Sports Plus to Sports, we lose the exhaust note. So I'll do that again, see if you can pick it up. I think it does make a significant, it certainly makes a significant difference from inside the car. Okay, so we'll turn that back to comfort. Okay, the button in the middle here is engine start and stop. At the bottom, just whilst we're on the subject, you can individually tailor your suspension settings. And then the control above it is to deactivate the traction control that you have available to you on the car. On the other side, you've got the exhaust loud button, as I call it. So basically, independent of which setting you're in, whether that be comfort, sport or sports, you can set up you can make the car nice and noisy. You've got the on-off, what I call the on-off, but this is basically the button that controls the engine cutting out in traffic to allow the manufacturers to achieve their emission control levels. Here, the button here, which I didn't know the other day, is actually for putting the car in manual. So if you want to use the flappy paddles which you have on either side of the steering wheel. Okay, and then in the middle you've got the gear lever to select which transmission you're in. So you've got park, which you push down to select. You've got reverse, neutral and drive. Now you don't use this much, and there's no requirement to use this much when you're on the go, but quite clearly when you're not on the go you do need to use it, and it's not in a good position. Normally you'd have your gear lever here, whether it's a manual or not, you'd have your gear lever here. So I'll come back to you a little bit later on more about this, but signing off for now.